He thought he was coming home to a warm embrace. Instead, he walked into a house filled with silence, secrets, and a scream that would change everything. When Sergeant David Callahan returned from deployment in the dead of night, he expected a quiet homecoming. What he didn't expect was the terrified cry of his daughter behind a locked bedroom door, and the hollow eyes of a child too scared to speak. What was she hiding? What had happened in that house while he was gone? As David starts digging, what he uncovers is more chilling than any battlefield, because the real enemy wasn't outside the wire, it was already living under his roof. Listen until the end of today's story to find out what was happening in his home. Please let us know which country you're listening from, and also please subscribe to our channel. Sergeant David Callahan returned home under the cover of darkness, rain sliding across the windshield of his truck like a veil. He hadn't seen his daughter Sophie in nearly 3 months. The deployment had been silent, no letters, no photos, just orders. As he stepped into his quiet suburban home in Maple Glen, Oregon, something felt off. The scent of lavender and lemon air fresheners he never used drifted in the air. The lighting was too soft, too curated. Everything was too clean, too perfect. And then came the scream. "Daddy!" Sophie's blood-curdling scream tore through the house like a siren shattering the fragile stillness. David, startled into instinct, bounded up the staircase, his boots thudding against the hardwood like war drums. His heart pounded in rhythm with each step as dread clenched his chest. At the top, he found Sophie's bedroom door locked. He pounded once, then twice, but there was no response. With one powerful kick, the door crashed open against the wall. Inside, Sophie was curled tightly in the corner of the room, her small arms wrapped around her knees, her face streaked with tears and red from crying. Her whole body trembled, as if even the air in the room had turned hostile. Melanie stood nearby, oddly composed, a pillow still in her hand, her mouth slightly open like she had been interrupted mid-excuse. David rushed to his daughter, falling to his knees beside her, his hands hovering for a moment before gently touching her shoulder. She didn't recoil, but she didn't move toward him either. She was stiff, stuck between fear and resignation. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, seemed to look through him, not at him. The room was quiet, but the air pulsed with a tension that told him everything. Something had happened here. Something he wasn't supposed to see. Melanie claimed Sophie had slipped, but the mark on her cheek and the emptiness in her eyes told a different story. David held his daughter as she trembled, the small girl not hugging back but no longer resisting. Something was deeply wrong. David noticed the absence of Sophie's belongings. No owl-shaped cups, no lactose-free milk in the fridge. At preschool the next morning, her teacher, Miss Karen Lowell, met David outside the classroom with a concerned expression etched across her face. In a hushed voice, she revealed that Sophie had become noticeably more withdrawn over the past several weeks. She no longer volunteered during group activities and startled at loud noises, her body recoiling as though anticipating punishment. David listened, his stomach knotting with every word. When David gently asked Sophie about it in the car on the way home, her tiny voice barely reached him from the back seat. She whispered that Melanie and Grandma Helen had told her if she ever said anything, if she told anyone how she felt, then her daddy would leave and never come back, that he would forget her just like her real mother had. David pulled the car over. He turned around slowly, locking eyes with her through the rearview mirror. "That will never happen," he said with complete conviction. "No one, and I mean no one, gets to take you away from me. I'm here. I'm staying." Pretending to return to base, David stayed behind. He began watching, listening. He heard Diane scolding Sophie in hushed but venomous tones. Tyler, Melanie's teenage son, whispered threats about monsters under the bed. One night, David found Sophie scrubbing the floor with raw hands. Melanie brushed it off as a joke, but when David found notes hidden inside Sophie's stuffed bear, one reading "Don't Tell," he knew he needed help. He contacted Brandon Ruiz, an old Army friend. Brandon handed over hidden gear, a charger with a mic, a teddy bear embedded with a camera, and a recording chip. David set everything up in Sophie's room. What the recordings captured made his blood run cold. Melanie hurling cruel words, Tyler invoking fear, and Sophie, quiet, never crying, just breathing, trembling. Still, Brandon warned it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed to be precise. An anonymous email tipped David off. Ask Sophie about the closet. That night, David found his daughter huddled in the corner of her tiny closet, eyes wide but dry, clutching her broken bear. She leaned into him, just slightly, but it was enough. It was trust. And with it came his decision. He made a call. It was time to act. David sought the truth about Melanie. With the help of Jenna Blake, an old classmate, and Annie from Child Protective Services, he uncovered a history of abuse. Melanie had once been a victim herself, forced into an abortion by her mother, Helen, who now controlled the household with steely grace. Melanie had never healed, and in her pain she became the same monster she once feared. At exactly 8 a.m., the doorbell rang. Officers, a social worker, and Brandon Ruiz stood outside the front door, their presence quiet but commanding. Tyler, still in his pajama pants, peeked through the blinds and froze. Within seconds, panic surged through him. He bolted toward the back door, but one of the officers was already circling the side of the house. Tyler was tackled just as his hand reached for the garden gate. Inside, Melanie's voice rose in a screech as she stormed out of the kitchen. Her hands trembled, but her outrage was loud and deliberate. "This is insane. You have no right," she screamed as the social worker stepped inside, holding the official paperwork like a shield of truth. Helen remained on the sofa, staring straight ahead, her face unmoving, her lips pressed together in an expression that betrayed neither surprise nor protest. But it was over. The weight of secrecy, fear, and control that had haunted the house for months had finally been shattered. Sophie was gently led out, still holding her bear. When she looked at David and leaned her head on his shoulder, everyone in the room understood. This child had endured more than she ever should have. In court, the prosecutor laid out the evidence: audio recordings, photos, reports. Melanie received 4 years, Tyler 18 months, Helen probation and permanent separation from minors. There were no screams in the courtroom, only silence, heavy and just. At Silverwood Behavioral Health Center, David read the letter from Melanie. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She only asked that maybe someday Sophie could call her mother. David didn't show Sophie the letter. Not yet. Dr. Evelyn Morris said healing takes time, and so they waited. Sophie began drawing again. Homes with lights on, apple trees, people smiling. One day she taped a drawing to the fridge, 2 people standing in the rain, holding hands. The word home was scrawled above in wobbly letters. The H was backward, but the meaning was clear. David didn't ask her to explain. He didn't need to. One evening, Sophie whispered, "Please don't lock the door." David replied, "Never. The door's always open." Because this story was never just about justice. It was about protection, about choosing to stay, about learning how to love even after pain. And in that quiet home on a rainy street in Maple Glen, a little girl was finally safe, and a father was finally home. What would you have done if you were in David's shoes, and would you ever show Sophie the letter from her stepmother? Please let us know in the comments below, and thank you so much for listening to Storyline Narratives. Please subscribe to our channel.